Well, good evening, Source Nation. I'm your host, Jaketra Bryant, and I want to welcome you to Family Mix Mondays, a show where I strive to break generational cycles within our families and our communities. And today we are continuing our series of Black mental health in our communities and how it affects us as parents and what we can do about it. And so I have just had a lot of great guests who shine so much light on things such as the mental health in the Black community with our men. And so today we're going to look at more of mental health from another expert that is a licensed clinician inside the field. And we're going to take a look at things within the church, a lot of other myths that go on that keep a lot of our community as the Black community not seeking services, not feeling safe enough to actually go and ask for help, even if it is something along the lines of divorce or relationship issues. We want to just find out what's up with that myth and how can we break those cycles. And so I have guest LaShonda Fletcher. She is a licensed marriage family therapist, is a lead therapist at the Revelation Counseling Center, and she was just voted on Best Marriage Counselors in Louisville, Kentucky. Congratulations on that. LaShonda received a master's in marriage and family therapy and master's in religion from Louisville Presbyterian Theological Seminary. She loves working with couples. Her desire is for each couple to have a healthy and happy relationship. And LaShonda is also a state certified DUI program provider. She has a certificate from Just Solutions for Mediation, a certificate in Black Church Studies, and a certificate in Prepare and Enrich Premarital Counseling and Godman Level 1 Training for Mental Counseling. She is also a member of the AAMFT Louisville Seminary Counseling Center Advisory Committee and Delta Kappa International Honors Society of Marriage and Family Therapists. LaShonda is also the author of The Black Church and Mental Health. You may check out her new TV show, Mental Talk, on Spectrum Channel 200 on Sundays at 5 p.m. And I'm going to let LaShonda tell you more about me as we welcome her in to Family Mix Monday. So hello, LaShonda, and thank you so much again for just being a part of this series.
Hello, guys, for having me. I am super excited to be here. My ultimate goal is always to try to bring mental health awareness to our community. And so that's one of the reasons why I started Mental Talk with Shonda. On my TV show, I bring in different guests and we talk about mental health issues, or we talk about, what's going on in the community and how mental health affects that. And so one of the new things that I have been doing on my TV show, Mental Talk with Shonda, is I've decided to kind of like break the segments up. And so I have like 2 half-an-hour segments. And so I talk about mental health and celebrities because a lot of people, now that we have internet, we get a lot of insight into celebrities. So, Mariah Carey just got diagnosed with bipolar disorder. And a lot of celebrities, African-American celebrities, are coming forward with the discussion of depression, bipolar disorder, things of that nature, which is bringing a lot of mental health awareness to our community. So that way these young people can actually see that, okay, it's okay for me to get help. So I've been doing a segment on that, and I've also been doing a segment on individual counseling and mental health needs. Then I also have another segment that deals with relationships and, the issues and things of that nature that we face in relationships. And so there's different things of that nature, just about bringing mental health awareness to the community. So yeah.
Definitely congratulations on that. And every one of those topics, each one of those topics is definitely needed. And I'm with you. Like, I think a lot of the times when it comes to social media, there's a whole lot on like this fame with finances, but there's not a lot of emphasis on the health of the mind and kind of the psyche part of individuals. So I'm glad more celebrities are coming forth to talk about, maybe why they were back and forth, or why we didn't see them for a while, or why they were in this relationship or that relationship, and how actually mental health actually played a role in that. So good open discussion.
Yeah.
Okay,
It's been a really good thing. I think Taraji Henson is now opening up a big mental health organization to help with mental illness. And so I really like that about her. But then you have Mariah Carey. We have athletes that's coming forward because, especially for African-American men, for them to seek help is oftentimes considered to be a weakness within our community. And so there's been several football players who have come forward who have said that they have suffered with depression or have had panic attacks. And so that has helped a whole lot. Michelle Williams from Destiny's Child, she's making it one of her life goals to bring mental health awareness to our community. And so I'm just excited about the fact that now a lot of people do not have to suffer in silence anymore, and that now mental health is starting to become more serious, and people are starting to be more woke within our community.
Yeah, I agree. I heard that about Tarji P. Henson, because her dad committed suicide, attempted suicide, and that was part of her organization. So I think it's unfortunate that we get to a point where people have to have suicide in their families, or where there's a lot of police brutality that's actually leading to people saying, wait a minute, there's something I need to talk about. So I hope that one day we'll move to a point, our conversations like this, and through your show and my show, that people will see that it's normal to have conversations. We don't have to get to the extreme cases like suicide or police brutality, or, like drug addiction, overdoses and things like that.
But I do think that one of where the news fell is the fact that suicide is much more prevalent than what it comes across. And so the media does not display the fact that African American men have one of the highest suicide rates in the country. And so when I was brought up as a child, my parents always said that, you know what, African Americans, we don't commit suicide. That's stuff that white people do. But the reality is that if you actually look at the statistics, African American men are committing suicide much faster than they are shooting each other. But what we see on the news and what the media tells us is that there's a lot of black on black crime, and that's the stuff that they report on. They're not going to report on, this guy taking his life around the corner. And so that's another reason why mental health awareness is so important. So that way that people know what's actually taking place, more so than us just sweeping it under the rug in our families, and not allowing people to know the real reason why Larry took his life, or why, Gene took his life, or what happened with Gene, because these things are happening in our families, but they're just not being, discussed.
Mm-hmm. I agree. So let's have those discussions. And so since we are talking about Black mental health, and we are talking about how to get them involved. And so I want to talk about how can parents have these same types of conversations? And so we know that people are coming out like celebrities. People are coming out, we have Silence the Shame. It's been really blowing up a lot here with this organization. But how can parents have conversations about what they're seeing in the media, about different disorders coming out, if they are indeed Black and not educated, and have actually seen that uncle that everybody just let be crazy in the back of the house? So as a person who works primarily with families, how do you suggest just starting these conversations that when we do see the things in the media?
Well, I think it's just I think for me, what my goal is, right, is when I do my TV show, it's about educating people to have regular, everyday conversations about mental health. So let's say, mommy got high blood pressure. I'm going to say, mommy got high blood pressure, and my kids know that I have high blood pressure, right? And that if they see me taking my pills, then guess what they know? Mommy's taking high blood pressure medicine. And so I think it starts at us being honest with our kids about our emotions and about our feelings, and us being able to explain that it's okay to, feel this way, that it's okay for a person who's depressed. What does that look like? What does that mean? Does that mean that person's going to always stay depressed? Not necessarily. Mommy could be feeling down today, or mommy's depression is acting up. And so I think it's about learning how to be transparent with our emotions and our feelings, instead of, teaching our kids to wear a mask, or teaching our boys to just suck it up and deal with it, and teaching them, that it's not okay for them to show, their emotions, but telling their kids about depression. Are you being honest with your kids about, this is the way that I'm feeling? Mommy has, a disorder, but I'll be okay in a couple of days. So I think a lot of it has to do with being very transparent about what's taking place, if it's you, or whether or not it's a family member that's dealing with depression, but trying to make it a part of everyday conversation, to where the shame and the stigma is able to slowly, leave.
Mm-hmm. I agree. I think one, just like you said, being transparent, I think is something really necessary. And
Yeah.
speaking of that, thinking about like the issues that we have in the Black families, one of the issues that we have in the Black families is like with women, I'm gonna speak for women, is to be strong and to kind of just keep it moving, right? And
Yeah.
so I feel like a lot of the things, they are generationally passed on, and no one's talking about the impact of the keep it moving, strong Black woman.
Mm-hmm.
And so I want to help a lot of our families and a lot of our mothers, especially in the Black family, like really, really be transparent, be humble, be honest, and be human. We're not human anymore because of the myths or because of the social norms that has gotten grouped with us. So like, how do you speak to that Black woman to say it's okay to be human?
Mm-hmm. Basically, it's just what you just said. You know, I know. But that's the reality of it, is that a lot of that stuff is in which I talk about in my book, you know, the Black church and mental health. I talk about it in my book because a lot of that stuff have been passed down from one generation to the next. A lot of it stems from slavery, you know, and us feeling like that it's okay for us to carry the weight of the world on our shoulders. And people fail to realize, especially our community fail to realize, that if we're going to sit here and we're going to try to, you know, be overly strong, you know, try to hold in all of our emotions, then the reality is that not only do it affect our mental health, but it begins the process of affecting our physical health. And so what do we have? We got high blood pressure, we got diabetes, we have heart disease, stomach ulcers. You know, some of these diseases can also be caused by stress, and us not allowing ourselves to be able to talk and be able to process and work through certain situations. Like, I had a 30-something-year-old woman that come in my office, and the first thing she said, if my mother knew that I was here airing out our dirty laundry, that she would die. Like, my mother would die. Because as a child, we're taught, okay, well, don't go up and down the street airing our dirty laundry, you know, because we've always been taught to hide everything that's going on in our life and just keep on pushing it down, pushing it down. And then when we do that, what happens? It also affects our relationship. And so what do? We go to our pastors about everything, right? And so and that's one of the reasons why I decided to use the church as an avenue to talk about mental health, because the reality is that as African Americans and from slavery, the church have always been a place of refuge for us. And so we go to our pastors with every issue that we have: our finances, our relationships, our marriage, depression, the whole nine, thinking that our pastors is supposed to help us, are supposed to heal us from this thing, when our pastors have so much other things going on in their life that they have to worry about and deal with. And they're not equipped oftentimes to be able to help us with what it is that we're going through. And so it's about trying to teach the church even that there's agency and there's other things and resources that's out there that's available that can help your congregant to be able to succeed and, you know, and go on in life, you know.
I agree. And speaking of that with the Black church, I did a particular forum with the Deltas, and it was called Breaking the Stigma. And it was geared primarily within the Black communities. And I remember a young lady stood up and she says, how do I handle my family when all they keep doing is saying, just pray about it. And so she was like, it's not that I'm against prayer, but she was like, I have been praying about it and nothing's happening. She says, and I know that there is a next step to this. So that's why she was like, I came to this forum to just get some information. And she was really serious. And I've heard that a lot before, that the solution keeps being pray about it. And I think you're right, like educating the people within the church, I'm a believer myself, so I go to God first. I believe in seek ye first. I really do. But I also know God has a conversation back with me with solutions. He has divine appointed people. And so I think recognizing that they're the experts. There are experts in several areas.
I tell people, if we have a member of our church, you know, me and my husband, we co-pastor. If one of our members in our church come to me and say, Pastor, my blood pressure has been out of control, I'm going to tell my member, oh, you need to go see a doctor. Do you get what I'm saying?
Right.
It's not, I'm going to tell them to pray. Yeah, go ahead, make sure you pray, but go see a doctor. But the problem with mental health is that our pastors are not saying, okay, well, you're dealing with a depression, which could be a chemical imbalance of your brain. You need to go seek a professional. They're saying, okay, I demand this spirit of depression to leave in the name of Jesus. And then when it don't go nowhere because there's a chemical imbalance going on in the brain, then all of a sudden this person is feeling like they lack faith and belief in God. And that's not necessarily the case. The same way our dysfunction and our diabetes can dysfunction, and we can develop cancer, things of that nature. Our brain can dysfunction, our mind can have issues, and the blood flow can be off. So it's about educating pastors and people within the community that sometimes there can be a chemical imbalance in the brain that can cause us to be depressed, and other things to be off balance when it comes to our minds sometimes. And it's okay.
I agree. And just like how we are having like conversations like this, or we're having like where people come to schools and things, like I work at a university, so there are constantly people coming to classrooms. I think that also needs to be with this open conversation. Like I hear a lot in the media where people like, our officers need to get mental health training because there's a lot of shootings that were coming with people who were mentally insane. And so people kept saying our officers need to get some training on mental health. I think the same thing needs to be for like the pastoral staff. And the same thing needs to be for the government staff, Lord, the government staff. The same thing, like all of them actually need to have some type of training when it comes to approaching and looking at distress symptoms, so that we can actually like really address a lot of these things. And then maybe then our families will feel more comfortable to have engaging conversations.
And I think that's the part that is important, right? So I've talked to two different males on two different occasions. One male I talked to, he got thrown out of the church. And the reason why he got thrown out of the church is because the church felt like that his behavior was bizarre. He had PTSD from being in the military. The church did not know what to do with him. So now this guy literally has church from home because he don't feel comfortable going into the body of Christ. That's the last place that he should be getting thrown out of. But considering that the church do not have a clear understanding of mental health issues, the church feel like they probably doing as best as they know how in as far as being able to deal with him. Then I had another young man who called me and he said, so you're a marriage and family therapist, but you're also a pastor. And I said, yes, sir. And he said, I have bipolar disorder. And he said, my church do not understand me, but you understand me, you get me. He said the church is constantly trying to pull this demon out of me because they feel like that what I have is a demon. And and he just was in tears. He was crying in my ear. He was in so much pain because this church kept on saying that he have a demon and he has bipolar disorder. And so that's the reason why I feel like that is very important that people recognize that we have a mind, body, and a spirit. And don't get me wrong, yes, sometimes people do come to me with spiritual issues, but everything that is a mental issue do not mean that it's a spiritual issue. And that's one of the conversations that I have with pastors all the time, and sometimes it's an argument.
Yeah, I would imagine.
So it's interesting, but I've even had a young lady who I could tell she was schizophrenic, and they wanted her to take medication, and she felt like that if I take this medication, that means I'm taking a crazy pill, and so that's me saying that I'm crazy, and it also means that I don't have any faith in God. And that's a very sad place to be,
right,
when you have agency in front of you that can make you want to wake up and live. But she was waking up every morning not wanting to be here anymore, but she was willing to do that in order to try to please people that's around her.
And I do a lot of counseling in my office with a lot of people who I feel like God sends me, and they have concerns of like borderline, or they've been sexually abused, and very valid mental health issues. And I'll incorporate a lot of the principles of God and who God is and how strong he is with changing things and things like that. But I think through my wisdom and just through really being mindful of the Holy Spirit will address their root because I understand like they can't even hear anything else yet because there's a lot of root that needs to be addressed. Right. The actual thing that caused depression or the actual thing. And then maybe their faith will build up in that God is almighty or that God is a healer. I do that from just kind of being more sensitive in my field as well as sensitive as a Christian with the fact that we're losing Christians and we're losing people to church hurt. So I just think that it's a lot of this humility that needs to take place, unfortunately, within the body.
I like to draw diagrams with my clients. And so the one thing I like is that I can still bring God's presence in the room without me even seeing God, right? But at the same time, I also realize that spiritual man does have to be fed. And so even when we're dealing with people who have depression and they have that chemical imbalance of the brain, at the same time, the word of God can bring them hope. You get what I'm saying? In a place of hopelessness and worthlessness. And so there's ways of being able to definitely implement scripture and biblical text into the counseling room. But the reality is that even in that, it's like still making sure that I'm educating this person on what kind of disorder and the things it is that they're dealing with that's going to affect them from a mental health standpoint. And so scripture has all, and and prayer has done wonders for some of my clients. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But in the process of that, there's other therapists, that we can bring into the room that can help them as well.
I agree. And I think it goes back, like you said, the big education part. But and it sounds like we're dealing with a bigger piece. We're dealing with the stigma that's coming now with church hurt, with people just casting everything out right now. And then we're dealing with like the Black families, the women who feel like they got to keep going and going and going. And then we dealing with the Black men who feel like I just got to make sure everything goes and goes and goes. And then no one's talking to the cycle that we're reproducing. And so, and it's a big community issue. So it sounds like based on that, it's just not a single person's issue. It's a community issue.
Yeah, it is. And I think too, a lot of the stuff that we're facing is deep rooted stuff. You get what I'm saying? Even in my book and how I touched on the Tuskegee syphilis experiment. My thing is that why come my grandfather don't want to go to the doctor? Why come my daddy don't want to go to the doctor? Why do I have a hard time getting my husband to go to the doctor? And some of them don't know why they don't want to go to the doctor. Well, some generations of that Tuskegee experiment has passed down. There is definitely a suspicion to the medical community. So even when I get couples that come in my office for marriage counseling, most of the time, most of the Black men that I get in my office are here because their wives brought them for marriage counseling when they really probably should have been coming alone. But oftentimes they sit at the edge of the seat and it's like, wait a minute, why are you sitting at the edge of the seat? And so then it's about me making sure that I explain to them what I do and that I'm not here to give you medication, that the reality is that we all have issues and that you're here because we get ready to work through your issue, not because I think you're crazy. And he was like, ooh, like, I thought she was going to say I was crazy or something, and then he sat back in the chair. And they were my clients for like a year. And we worked through so many things and they ended up leaving, having a wonderful marriage and a wonderful relationship. But sometimes we go through hell simply because we don't even know the resources and the things that's out here that's available that can help us and help our relationship flourish. So,
because it goes back to what you said earlier, don't let my dirty laundry out. So what goes in the house stays in the house. Like now I'm 36. And so I even grew up on that. And I'm like a tip away from the one of those scales of millennials. And so like, I even grew up on what goes on in the house stays in the house and don't air your dirty laundry. So that says that this thing is truly passing on. It really is. And I think we're now in a generation where a lot of more of the people now are a little more bolder, but now they're bolder and everybody now think they all loose because of the different sexualities or the different things that people are now saying. And so it's just now, if a lot more conversations would have been had, I don't know where, if we would be right here, I believe everything is God's divine, but I think it wouldn't be such a stigma to break where it's a negative thing to come and talk.
Yeah.
So I know we talked a little about the women when it comes to the Black woman and this superwoman syndrome and just kind of trying to get that person to realize that that's not a real person and that we actually are human. And so do you think there are some practical things that a person can do that is the woman of the household within the family to begin her self-modeling and breaking that stigma from the Black Superwoman syndrome?
The Black Superwoman syndrome. One of the things that, especially, I think in today's modern times, and that is that we're dealing with a lot of single moms who have a load of responsibility on them. And some of them feel like that, what, if I don't do it, then nobody else is going to do it. Mm-hmm. And so we're also dealing with a generation of, what, how do you begin the process of telling a mom or it's okay for her to practice good self-care, And I think the reality is that that's something that we have to model, especially if we have kids within our household. It's like, what, I've seen mom practice good self-care, whether that means, what, if I need this day off, because sometimes we will work ourselves to the point to where we end up sick. And then our body will send us a sign that says, what, you need to sit down somewhere and rest, because if you don't do it yourself, your body will shut down and it will shut you down, And so the reality is that when I say practice good self-care, sometimes that means, what, it's okay to say no, because the reality is that sometimes we want to be everything to everybody, and we can't be everything to everybody. So we need to learn how to make sure that we can exercise the word no. Also learn how to make sure that we map out time, even if that means that you have to schedule an appointment with yourself. And I've had people that had to literally put in their cell phone in order for them to be able to have an hour to themselves. And so I think it's about making sure that we learn the power of no, and that we also make sure that we have self-care time. And that means whether we go to the spa, whether we go get our hair done, whether we decide that we're going to go to lunch with our friends or, a colleague, or whatever, but making sure that we know how to treat ourselves well. I think that's one of the most important things. And then making sure that we are practicing good mental health, because whether people realize it, you don't just have to go to the therapist just because everything is chaotic in your life, but it's good to have an appointment with a therapist about once a month. And if you don't need a month, maybe every 2 months, just to talk through some of the things that's going on in our life. Because if we have on a Superwoman cape, then guess what? That means that we have a whole lot of stuff on us. And so if we have a whole lot of stuff on us, then how is that coming out in our behavior? Do you get what I'm saying? If we're under stress, if we're under anxiety, then that means that somebody is feeling this stress and this anxiety with us. It could be our spouse, it could be, our kids, but who's feeling that? If nobody else is feeling it, and if you are single and you still got this Superwoman cape on, then that still means that you need an outlet. And so that outlet could come in the form of, what, let me go ahead and set up a therapy appointment just to do a self-check, even if it's just to have this moment of meditation, or yoga, or something like that. But we have to make sure that we are taking very good care of ourselves.
That's something I had to learn as well. I'm a single mother, and I'm also a professional in this field.
Yeah.
And I pride myself on trying to be human. And so I had to learn that the challenge wasn't me not teaching my son to talk. For me, within a Black family, because I'm raising a Black young man.
Yeah.
The challenge for me was to recognize that I too need my timeouts. So I had to tell him, Mommy needs to be quiet right now. It's been a long day. Or come on, you interfere in my Saturday gym time, where this is the little time I get. But that was really important to me. Now I can learn how to execute it better. I'm still working on that. But that was my self-care.
Yeah, ask for help. It's okay to ask for help. You get what I'm saying? And I think that the other thing too is sometimes people can make us mad or make us angry, or might not have been able to help the last time. So I'm not going to ask for help this time. I'm just going to do it on my own. But the reality is you have to be able to ask for help. It's okay to ask for help. And if it didn't work out the last time, okay, well, maybe I might be able to get help from this person this time, or maybe I'll ask somebody different this time. But it is okay to ask for help, even if it's work, or whether it's help with the kids, or calling the kids' dad and say, hey, can you come and get them? Or can you keep them a little bit longer this time? But we have to make sure that we know that it's okay to ask for help,
Yep. I agree. I agree. So that's definitely something like parents, let's encourage you to ask for help, encourage you to know when you need help, and
Yes.
encourage you to like that whole myth about Superwoman. It doesn't work for anybody. And I think that's the thing, like when we look back at our grandmothers, and I think that was the argument with a lot of the men when it comes to the physical health that you mentioned. A lot of them didn't see the consequences of the great-granddads or the granddads or the dads not going to the hospital because dad kept working. So they didn't get to see the consequences that the organs were really shutting down, or they cut off about 5 or 10 years of their life, or they were breathing differently. Or when they went to the bathroom, they may have had different concerns with digestion. And I think that's the problem. No one's ever taken the mask off.
We don't begin the process of taking the mask off, then guess what we're going to do? We're going to kill ourselves. You know, even with me as a mental health professional, I was just talking to one of my mental health friends, and they were like, look, you're going to have to model self-care. You talk to your clients about self-care, but you're not modeling good self-care. And I found myself being so busy at my counseling center to the point to where I was scheduling appointments at lunchtime. So I did not realize how important just that 1 hour or hour and a half was to my mental health or to my physical health, to the point to where, you know, my blood pressure has shot up because I'm listening to people's problems all day, every day. Then I wasn't even taking a lunch break. And so I realized at that moment, I'm like, you know what, I have to make sure that I'm modeling good self-care, because when my clients come in the door, how am I going to be good for them if I'm not good right now? You get what I'm saying? So I had to literally cancel a couple of appointments. And then this weekend, what did I do? I shortened my Friday. I stayed in the bed majority of Friday. And then on Saturday, I had a small amount of clients I had to see. But then when I came back home Saturday, I just kind of like laid around and did things that I knew that I would be able to enjoy. But it helped me to see that I need to scale back some. But it's sad that it took my body to do that, you know, because I wasn't feeling good and my blood pressure was up, for me to actually realize that, you know what, you doing too much. Go sit down somewhere for a moment. But that's literally what my body was sending me. And so we have to make sure that we take that cape off. And I realized that, you know what, it's okay to say, no, that I can't come to your church and speak this week. It's okay for me to say, you know what, that's my lunchtime. I have to have that self-care. But I was literally feeling so sorry for some of my clients to the point to where I was booking up my lunch breaks, and I'm here from 9 to 7.
It's easy to do. I overbook myself. I remember when our social clinical director told me I give like 200%. She was like, take it down some. And I was like, what? I told you I'm supposed to have good work ethic because they mean a lot to me. But I was tired, and my displacement comes in my home. Like that's why I have the biggest attitude. And then I don't balance things after a certain amount of clients. So I've had to learn after a certain amount of clients, sit down somewhere myself. And then I'll start picking up weight, and I'll start just eating out and eating bad. Then I'd be over here mad because I don't like my stomach gain weight or something. I'm just like, what? And I'm stressed, and I didn't take a moment. Now I'm mad at everybody else. Now I want to counsel everybody.
Right.
Like, oh, y'all get off my schedule.
So we have to model. So one of the things that I decided I was going to do, and that is every 2 months, I'm going to take a 4-day weekend.
That's a good idea.
A Friday and Monday. And then I'm going to try to sneak away and go somewhere, whether it's just a couple of hours away, or even if it's a staycation. But I realize that I have to be able to have that self-care time in order for me to be good for my husband and for me to be good for my kids. And so, you know, that's not a good feeling when you're not feeling good and you still feel like you got a ton of stuff on your plate to do.
That's a good idea. I'm going to take that too. I realized that by a certain point, I used to go, and I'm taking a vacation for my son's spring break. There's a week in the summertime, and then for the university, they're off for 3 weeks. And I used to be like, okay, I'm good with that. But I was speaking and teaching at professional development, so I technically wasn't off. I was still teaching and working. And so now I'm like, why am I tired after a month now? And so now I realize like I need to take more frequent breaks, because it does make a difference as to my health physically and my health mentally inside of my first. And then spiritually also, because I'm too tired on some Wednesdays, or too tired to get up and do my praise and worship. And that's something that feeds me back up so that I can even go into the office.
Exactly. Yeah. So all of that's important. And I went to a business conference. And one of the things that the lady said is that she's much better for her employees when she decides that she's going to take like vacations every 2 to 3 months, short vacations every 2 to 3 months. And then she comes back and she's much friendlier to her staff. And I was like, you know what? I need to implement
I like that. I like that. I like that. This is in the subject and off the subject also. But what about those particular like teenagers and kids who are seeing people in the social media light, like the celebrities who is big as a singer, who just recently had to go into the hospital due to drug usage. So what about those kids? So we have some kids watching those things. And since we're talking about like families, what about those kids that come in, those teenagers that are saying, hey, mom, dad, like, I want to talk about this. How can that conversation take its place within the family when the kids are indeed seeing these things and they want to be the ones that break the cycle? Like, what do you think like that conversation even starts to look like for those teens who want to go to their family members?
And see, that I think is where the issue is coming in at, I think within the older generation versus the newer generation, because kids have access. Like, you take your cell phone, next thing you know, they got the world. When I was younger, it was no internet. You get what I'm saying? We didn't have all of this to worry about, to where our kids had access to other people being able to give them gobs of information. Our kids, you know, our access was basically our friends that we saw at school, you know, and so now information is traveling a whole lot faster. And so that's the reason why the topic of mental health is so important as far as the churches. Even when we have health fairs at the churches, what do they have? They have a person there to give monograms, a person there to check your blood pressure, maybe somebody for diabetes, you know, and so there's no mental health professionals oftentimes at these health fairs. And so oftentimes the parents are going uneducated when it comes to, you know, mental health. And so I think really that issue more of a community issue, and how do we get mental health information in the hands of parents to where parents can have that conversation with them. Like, my daughter came home and we was watching a TV show. I think it was somebody was on one of the TV shows, and my daughter's like, I think that's a trans person. And I'm looking at her like, what do you know about a trans person? And so the reality is that she knew about a trans person because of what she had heard at school, not based upon me and my husband having this conversation with her. And so at that point, it opened it up to where, guess what? We had to have that conversation with my daughter, find out what it was that she knew about it and how it made her feel. And so I think it still goes back to, you know, with these celebrities and how Demi ended up going into the hospital, you know, for a drug overdose. It's about, okay, how, you know, asking the kids questions about what it is that they have read, how it made them feel, and then if the parent have any insight, being able to offer their kids some kind of a comfort and insight. Because there was a young rapper who got murdered, I think, a couple of months ago, and there was kids that was online that was talking about that this person really helped them with their mental health needs, and he was talking a lot about mental health. And a lot of these kids was talking about committing suicide because one of their favorite rappers had died. And so that was a conversation that I had to have with my kids. And of course, my kids know about mental health. And so from their perspective, it's dumb to commit suicide because your favorite rapper died. But for a person who feels like this person gets them and their own parents don't get them, then that's big, you know?
Right.
Yeah.
I agree. And so I know you're talking about, because I started following a blog, because I'll get on my rabbit trail and I'm all over the place about like, oh, and what happened to this person and what they said here. And I'm watching all the videos before, you know it. But you're right. Like, I've had several clients who come in and begin thinking that their world is shattered and that's their solution when their favorite artist dies.
Yeah.
And they would have never met them, but literally it hits home.
Yeah.
Where they are just like, that's it, I'm gonna go to. And so I think you're right, having conversations inside the family just about even the things that we may catch on the news.
Yeah. And just making sure that your kids know that you are there for them, that we can talk about this. You don't have to hide, you know, who it is that they're listening to, you know, or talking to their kids about how did you connect with this person, you know, but being open and not being as judgmental, you know, because our kids are never going to open up to us if they feel like if I bring this to mom or if I bring this to dad, that they're going to shut me down, they're going to judge me, they're going to, you know, say these things, you know, to make me feel bad about my choices, you know, things of that nature. But I do know that this young rapper, he looked rough on the outside, but coming to find out, he was really connecting with kids that had mental health issues, and that was important to them. And think about it, people who's dealing with mental health, they oftentimes feel isolated and feel like people don't understand them. And so for this young fella to come forward and talk about it, it really caused these kids to be very connected to them and feel like, you get what I'm saying, their life can't go on because nobody else get them, you know, especially dealing with borderline personality disorders and bipolar disorder, you know, things of that nature.
That's how you know it's all about someone, about being understood, because they do. This person got me. They spoke my language. So that says parents really need to tap in and be more in tune with these conversations because the kid feels misunderstood.
Yeah.
They really do.
Mental health, just like we read anything else, like nowadays you don't even have to go to the store and buy a mental health book. Go on line, put in psychology, or go in depression. There's so many good websites that's out here that's available, that's absolutely free, that can explain what depression look like, that can explain the symptoms of bipolar disorder, that can explain what anxiety look like. And so we don't even have to go outside of our own home to get educated on mental health anymore. So, go Google mental health. Find out the basics to where, you know what, I can have this conversation with a family friend or a member of my family, or something like that about mental health, and be able to make it a regular part of our daily conversation to where the shame and the stigma can actually go, and it can leave, and we can be more educated and be more aware of what could be taking place within our own families.
Yep. So as we close, a lot of tips that our family members need to look at. A lot, definitely, when it comes to taking our mask off, looking at educating our church family, looking at educating the communities, and just knowing that it's bigger than us. And so tell Source Nation kind of like where they can follow up with you on. I'm not sure if you're taking new clients, but maybe where they can just ask some different resources, different questions, and get in touch with you after.
I mean, they can reach me via email, which is lfletcher.rcc@gmail.com, or they can go to my website, which is www.rcclouisville.com, which, of course, we say it different than most other people. So Louisville is LOUISVILLE. That's a country accent. But they can go to my website at www.rcclouisville.com. And I do have a blog on that website. And so some of it's just simple mental health information, simple relationship tips. We do post on our blog. I try to post regularly, but I haven't been on there in a couple of weeks, so I will say that. But I do have a lot of good mental health information on there. Or like I said, they can shoot me an email. They can reach me also on Facebook and Instagram as well.
Thank you again so much just for being a part of the series. And I know that a lot of parents pull some information. And I think the biggest thing I wanted to make sure we emphasize was the stigmas that are centered around within our Black families, our women, and the church, and just everything that's keeping us from having healing. And sometimes it is ourselves. Sometimes it is generational trauma. Sometimes it is the messages that we were embedded in and instilled in at home from grandmother's house. And so hopefully and prayerfully that we are in the midst of our trajectory shift when it comes to actually having more conversations and letting people know it's okay, it's safe. It's safe to have self-care. It's safe to have a day to yourself. It's human.
Therapy's good.
Yes, it is. And congratulations again on the book and the show that you do. And so, Source Nation, I also want to remind you that there is a national mental health symposium that's taking place next week, August 29th and August 30th in Atlanta, Georgia. If you can just Google National Mental Health Symposium, then you'll be able to find out how to just come and hear different people talk about things from the opioid crisis to family to culture, and just really just start there if you're in the Atlanta area or nearby. And if you look up National Mental Health Symposium or the NAMI, N-A-M-I Alliance, you'll also find different places in your area and areas around you that really try to push and help you understand what mental health is. And you can go and talk to several therapists and licensed professional counselors and marriage family therapists there, several. And so I definitely want to encourage you all to like reach out to me if you need anything at www.b3mentalperformances.com. Email me at jabryant1913@gmail.com. Follow me on Twitter at Jaketra B. And just definitely reach back out and join me next week as I continue the series of mental health in the Black community, Black families, and really getting us into talking. And so thank you again just for joining me, and I'll see you back next week.
Bye-bye.
Get at me for beats, yo.